Should say that we're live here in just a second. I started it, so why is it saying off? There we go. We're live.
Oh man, the pressure.
Ready to go. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Clutch. Tonight we have a couple of guests. This is the first time holding multiple people on my live, so this is going to be a little bit interesting. So we have the entire crew of Apex. How do you say it, Chris?
Sneks, man.
Snakes or Sneks?
Sneks. Just roll with it. It's Apex
Sneks.
Yeah, some people
it's
try
almost
to
like snacks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some people try to overpronunciate it, and they're like snakes, and I'm like, no, we're not British. Like, we just wanted a softer word. That's all.
That's awesome. So we're hanging out with the crew of Apex Sneks. I don't know them. And we're going to ask them a couple questions and see what they think and see if I can get myself in trouble tonight. Should be fun.
I like that. I think we can get you in trouble.
Oh, I'm sure you guys are. Cheers to everybody.
Cheers
to a great live, guys.
Well, I don't have my Dr. Pepper on hand. I left it in the house.
Oh, damn it, Dalton.
I know. I ruined that. Yeah.
All right. So whoever wants to jump in and really start these questions, go ahead. But I want to know what got – it's a typical question in all honesty. What got you guys started in the reptile hobby?
Oh, yeah. I'll go first.
I guess I'll start.
Yep. No, don't. You run it.
Oh, well, I know for me, what got me started is I started with quite a few different species as far as collecting. And then I came across this actually the one I'm holding. That's why I said he had to be part of this. His name's Chow. It's my normal, Burm. And once I got him, it's like there was something different about him versus all the other species. So at that point, I started collecting all Burms. And then I was like, why not just like spread the love and passion that I have with others? And so I'm gonna go ahead and breed them, and I'm gonna try to make some line breed them down the line and make some unique snakes to pass on to others and let everybody else have a chance to feel the awesomeness of the species like I have. That's kind of how it started for me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Cameron, what you got, man?
Oh, man.
He's on the spot.
So, mine's a little more of like deep, like in-depth type deal. It was more of like a reptiles kind of saved my life type deal. I was kind of like on a self-destructive warpath. Got my first animal and kind of fell in love. I still have her today, actually. Gecko. And
awesome.
Basically, that was my first act, and now I had to be responsible for be alive, basically, and it just grew. And then I realized how misunderstood reptiles were in general, and how unappreciated they were. That really getting in front of people and really educating people, trying, and they're famous. So that's what it is for me.
It's freaking awesome, man.
Well, how do I should have went first, I guess, because now I got to look this shit up.
They're gonna make you sound like a jerk now.
I know, my gosh. Well, my first start, I guess, into reptiles was with ball pythons, which always tends to make people laugh because they're like, oh my gosh, you Burms. How the hell did you end up in that? But I started with ball pythons, and I got my first one when I was 18. I went to there was a local pet shop called the Sweet Feed Co. And was in there. I forget. I don't even remember. I wasn't there for reptiles, but I was there looking for something, and went back to this. They had like a cutoff space where they had like all the fish and all the reptiles, typical to pretty much any pet store. and walked in. They had a normal ball python, and she was huge, at least to me at 18. I thought she was huge. And so I was like, oh, I got to have that. That's so badass. And sure enough, I got her. I probably paid way too much money for her at the time. I don't even want to think about what it was, but I got into them pretty heavy, and then into ball pythons specifically. And then I started traveling for work about 4 years after that. So kind of fell away from them. Ended up dating a girl when I settled that was mortified of snakes. And so for a few years after I had moved from where I was to Indiana, because I lived in Ohio prior, but after I settled in Indiana, I was dating that girl. I should have known something was wrong when she didn't like reptiles, but that was like the first sign. But, whatever. I wasn't that smart at the time. I ended up getting back into them after me and that girl broke up, though. And Timber and I, who is definitely the better half, she was all about getting more and more ball pythons. And that's what I started out again getting into them with.
Right.
And it was my first berm that I saw at a friend of mine named Kylie's. She had this huge snake that I now own, Ka, our big granite that most people have seen. She owned that snake at the time, and when I saw Ka, I was like, there's no way in hell I cannot own a Burmese python. Like, I have to have this species. And long story short, I ended up really falling heavy into berms, and one berm to another berm, and ended up having a whole shit ton of berms. And now that's what I feel like I spend most of my day talking about. So, cheers.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's
right.
Awesome.
Man, that's right.
So that kind of leads us into our next question as well. So that's freaking awesome. So I have to ask you guys, every time I see Apex somewhere, it says all about that berm life. I need to know, what is the berm life?
Nolan's all about that berm life. Look at him right now.
Yeah. That's the berm life. We call this the berm shack. Good berm. This one I just pulled out here is the original of Apex Snakes' first clutch last season. Is the hypogranite paradox.
Oh yeah.
I know you can't really see him. He's kind of moving, but that's glitch, And
that's freaking awesome.
It's just a way of life. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. I think when you keep any larger constrictor, they require a lot more space, probably a lot more time, and it's just. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with keeping a smaller species. I love ball pythons, obviously, but you got to be more dedicated. I think more dedicated to just. They're big snakes, dude. Like, you're moving big animals. They're taking big shits. They're taking big pisses. It's fun. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of work. So, you get the hype of like having that bigger species, but then you also got that like that grind of care and maintenance that goes into them. So, I just think like we all kind of have anyone that keeps berms, especially the larger they get. And I would say even with retics or condas, I think people you tend to understand a little bit more, like when you walk in your house and you smell that giant pile of what they just laid, and it fills the whole damn house because it's a mound of fucking shit. Oh, yeah. Excuse my French, but
you're good.
That's what I think of when I think of the berm life. Is like, man, we are legit doing some crazy stuff for these animals. So,
I mean, I can't really talk against it. Like, I love all snakes, regardless of what the species is. I myself, I fell in love with the retics, but I think for big constrictors, it really falls upon the person. Like, I do appreciate a berm. Actually, the first large constrictor I ever worked with was, I think she was 12.5-foot albino Burmese. And that was when I was 14 years old. I think the snake outweighed me at the time. So,
hell yeah, I believe it. I believe it, man.
And I'm gonna elaborate with Chris on the care part of it. It's like we go above and beyond to get like feeders. Like people don't realize you gotta feed these big constrictors. You can't just sit there and feed it. You know, a bunch of rats at once. I literally networked myself with rabbit breeders for show rabbits to get calls because these meat rabbit people, I know in Louisiana, I should say, they want a lot of money for a rabbit, and it's like, man, I really gotta feed these snakes. Man, I drive all over Louisiana. I've drove as far as 4 hours one way just to get rabbits to feed these animals. You know,
that Burm life.
That's
right. It's that Burm life.
And
I've literally drove the longest travel. I can't speak right now. The longest drive I ever did for a Burm was 23 hours one way. That was all the way to Virginia from Louisiana. You know, and that's just because it's just that Burm life. I wanted that snake that bad, and the shipping wasn't an option, and it's like I had to have it, so I made it happen.
That's just dedication.
I dedicated to drive 23 hours one way.
That's a drive, brother.
Oh
absolutely. So you guys have been, what is it? It's a couple of years in now, right?
Yep.
Second year that you just completed, starting your third?
Yep.
Okay. So I know you have a couple of different genes that you're working with over there. I know there's a lot of hypo and het green or possibly green over there. What are your favorite genes that you're working with right now and your least favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well,
go ahead, man.
I would say, of course, I would say my least favorite would be albino, and reason being is I just have so much of it. I'm kind of getting tired of seeing it.
Yes.
But a lot of my stuff I inquired, I was actually after the hets or the visual albino, like whatever plays a part with it. Like, for instance, my albino lab, it's in shed now, but I wanted that pattern on that albino lab is just so bold. And for me to line breed it, I had no choice but to take it because it's what I wanted within the pattern, just not the color. But I could always outbreed the color out of it to try to keep the pattern going. But that's why I would say albino's my least favorite. Now, my ultimate favorite, I would say, is the Wayline caramels. That's one of my all-time favorites. As far as, morph go, I'm not talking just a combination of it. I just think that the normal caramel Wayline is just, so for some reason it sparked my interest the most.
Hey, Dalton, when you say, if you want to explain to them kind of the difference, I'd say, because there's two lines of caramel, right? So
there's for sure we have three in the U.S., but there might possibly be a fourth. I kind of still ain't really followed it too much. Those other breeders kind of stay on the low key of things. There's definitely a third one out there that I know of that's been unnamed as of now. Nobody's really spilled a name for it yet.
Right.
But the most common we're gonna say is the Gulf Coast. Yeah. They tend to have a more purplish color. To be distinctive in a way. It's really for the average person. I'm not trying to say that in a mean way, but for the average person, he really couldn't really tell the difference between the two because they both got purples in them. But I personally see Gulf Coast is more of a darkness to it, more of a purple to it, when the Wayline is more of like a bright purple. It's not quite as purple, but it's a lot brighter. So those are your two main ones that's been named in the U.S. One is the Island Wayline, which is, like I said, my personal favorite, and then you have the Gulf Coast line, and but of course, mainly everything out there is Gulf Coast. That's in the U.S. is mainly Gulf Coast. There's only like a handful of Waylines. I'd say I only know of personally 2 adults of Waylines as of now. nobody else has really opened up to me about what all
Sorry,
they got.
guys. Little girl's going crazy over here.
You're all right, man.
She's
How
like,
about
she's
you,
loving
Cameron?
that Burm life talk.
How about you, Cameron?
Oh man, I don't know, man. Really I haven't really hit the breeding section of all. So for me, in the labs, I don't know. I'm falling in love with the labs. That's definitely hitting me big. And I have to agree with Dalton on the albino thing. I just think that any more albinos just kind of played out. Like there's just so much of it out there. Everybody wanted it, and I feel like the market kind of got flooded, and then here we are. Everybody's got one. So
Exactly. So I feel like there's a consensus of apex snakes just they're done with that albino life and they're going another route. Is that safe
Right.
to
Well,
say?
we're just more on the line bred trait route is what it is, more or less. We're trying to trying to breed out distinctive looks is what that's our real mission. It's not so much as just genes. It's just the fact of how we're trying to take unique snakes that look, special to us and try to recreate that and line breed it into the offspring.
I think that especially with the U.S. market, that's the way to go. Chris, you're staying quiet over there, brother. Let's get your opinion. I feel like it's about to come out one way or another.
No, I mean with Burms right now, as far as genetics goes, I think the thing that I've kind of been thinking about or trying to eye down and pick specific snakes is more around line breeding projects. So we only have so many genes right now that are in the U.S. I think it's 6 to be exact, and there are different variations of them. They all look great. We're pretty talkative about the Hypocaramel Lab project, which it would be pursuing a world's first. But again, those are all genetics that already exist. So as I started hunting for specific berms or whatnot, I started looking for just unique traits, unique looks. Maybe a hypo is usually a darker, like tannish color that has like browns and blacks mixed in. And I was like, well, can I find one that looks super, super reduced, like pattern, or has a really, really light color, maybe more hangs towards the yellowish, and take some of those. So I would say we have a few snakes here now that are starting to fall into those line breeding projects that just have kind of these unique looks and aren't necessarily looking like every other specific hypo green or even granite, and just trying to replicate that. So, but really, I mean, as line breeding goes, and especially with berms and how long it takes females to get established, we're probably a few years down the road from really being able to really be able to show a lot of that to people. So, and really this year of breeding is probably the year that we're actually kicking off that sort of line breeding look. And then hopefully we'll see how it plays out. I mean, 2020 will be a good year. We should have some fun in that year. And then, 2021 will be a lot of fun. So, I just lost my phone. And as far as like least favorite goes, I would agree with the guys. I think albino's kind of been played out. There's a lot of albino, and I think this year we actually saw it even in our own, like in the market. So anything that had albino in it was a struggle to sell. Whereas we had single gene animals like greens and granites that were flying out. I mean, we just couldn't keep them. And then if we had an albino green or an albino granite, they just they stuck. So, I would say right now, albino, what's that?
There's a little bit of feedback, but
I gotcha. I would say right now it just feels like albino is sort of just dropping in the market. We could be wrong. Maybe next year it'll change and flip around. But even our normals were through the roof. We just couldn't keep those. As soon as we had them, they were gone. Right. And so I really think anything without albino is going to be hot going into next year. And it'll be different. I mean, it was a down year for a lot of burn breeders, including Apex. We did not have the clutches that we thought we were going to have. And, we had some beautiful snakes still, but it was a tough year. So hopefully this year we'll get a better idea what the market wants and kind of go from there.
So I really love that you guys, you were talking about with what we have in the U.S. because it's almost like you guys know what I'm about to ask. Like, I guess the berm way is somewhat limited, but so here's my next question for you guys. What are your thoughts on the import laws of berms and how they're really keeping these new genes that are popping up out of the U.S. right now?
I get them. I mean, I kind of come from the standpoint a lot of people are very dogmatic against them, and I understand why they're dogmatic against them, but I also understand why we have some of the laws that we do. And that example is really shown in Florida. So with the invasive species, invasive being the berms, and they really are a struggle on that ecosystem. So I definitely understand why the laws are in place. I'm not one to try and fight against them in that sense. I more look at it and say, well, what can we do with what we have here? And then let legislation sort of work itself out. We're pretty fortunate. We actually have a friend. His name's Ken Bergman, and he's actually doing a lot of work right now with communication between USARC and then some of the individuals that he has as far as communication to legislature. And so he's actively trying to work some of that stuff. And I think we have good people pursuing the legislative side, and especially full support to USARC. They were able to get a huge ban lifted for us as far as the Lacey Act goes. So we'll see, hopefully we don't see too many new laws pass, and maybe a little bit more common sense brought to the existing laws and can kind of build from there.
And I totally agree with Chris on everything he said. My personal belief is Florida has a little epidemic on their hands, but I personally feel, why does all states have to suffer?
Yeah.
I mean, those berms won't thrive up north. So why all those, I think what they need to do is not so much worry about the strictening of the laws as far as importation, but maybe state laws. Be a little more strict with state laws. Be strict on Florida. Be strict on, I'm even going to include my state. And it'd be very hard for them to live here, but it's still possible. In South Louisiana, Texas, I really think, the states where it really does matter should, be the ones strictening on the laws versus trying to punish the whole U.S. I guess you call it punishment. If you got it,
I feel like it's a punishment. I'm not gonna lie with you. I feel like it's a punishment. I know if my retics or if I had a berm got out here, they wouldn't make it. I live in the desert. Like, they get outside, they're going to be done. It's just not human enough for them.
Right. It's the same, even the same here. I live in South Louisiana, and, we have the humidity, but, I mean, I've actually have photos and documentation of a boa that had got out. Or it's either got out or somebody just went and let it loose. And it was loose for over a year, as we know of, because it was first reported. And I do wildlife calls here in my tri-parish area. And the sheriff's office called me for a call about a boa constrictor. And they sent me pictures. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely one. I thought y'all was like calling a water moccasin a boa constrictor like they normally do. And we didn't catch it for over about a year and a half before we got it, and it was on its deathbed. I mean, it had an ORI so bad, it had mouth rot, it was very thin because it hasn't eaten. I mean, you could just tell all the things that was going on. I mean, it's still possible they can thrive here, but it's not likely. It's very slim. You know, they really don't have the instincts like talking about it. From my perspective, from breeding, they don't know nothing more than a tub or a cage. Yeah, they could probably somehow kindle an instinct in the wild, but it's just very slim. I could put my Burms out in the yard, and they really, I mean, I hate to say it this way, they look dumb. Like they don't know what they want to do. They confused. They don't know which way they want to go. They just basically do a circle. It's
it's
just
more of
from
an
what
enrichment
I've
time for them and to let them stretch out more than anything.
Right, and I really think that it should be by state basis versus the whole U.S.
Yeah, I think
Cameron?
I was looking at the comments, and Royal Canvas Exotics had said something. They said some laws in New York are unreasonable regarding the big reptiles, and I will agree with that. And there are some states, like some of the northern states, that have laws that to me just don't make sense. Because I mean, in New York, one winter in any berm that got loose, procreated, even if they were able to do so, would be dead.
Exactly.
So I would agree. You know, I understand some of the southern states a little more, like Dalton was saying, Louisiana maybe, but really, I think the only state we have to worry about them in is southern Florida. Even northern Florida, they don't really go much higher because it's still the temperatures just will not allow for them to live. Period. They just can't exist there. It gets too cool, and so yeah, some of the laws are silly. I try to stay more on the positive side of it, though. You know, I think we reversed the law now. We've got good favor with some legislature. I think we just stay positive and really it gives me a good sort of segue into like the education side that we're now trying to do through Apex specifically. But if we just educate and keep the animals in a positive light going into our communities, I think that goes a long way. Not to get on any kind of soapbox or get ahead of what you're trying to ask.
Oh, no, you're good.
I really think I think that's where we have to go, and that's not just for berms. That's all reptiles, right. Because it's a lot of the legislative change isn't just specific to large constrictors. I was just at my friend Ruth's house today, and we were looking at tarantulas, and she was talking about how the Lacey Act is banning some of her species of tarantulas from being moved between state to state now, and that they're actually looking at possibly moving to where all of them are. And a lot of that is just because of the general populace being misinformed or having miscommunication. And I would even think as a community, I don't know that the reptile community is always the best at showing the animals the way that they should be. And that's a responsibility and a mirror that we kind of have to look in. And that's not to get preachy, but that's just, you know, we understand the animals. We've got to think of how can we deliver this to people who don't work with them, see them every day. And that's where we're trying to, a lot of where we're doing our breeding aspect with Apex. But now we've added this other side of like outreach and education that is kind of developing. But I don't want to get ahead of anything. I was just thinking through some of the comments we're getting.
Like I said, it's part of what we're here for. And I think that's great because I'm trying to remember, I follow you guys so closely, but there's so many different people in the industry that sometimes you're gonna fuck up. Like you're gonna forget who's in charge of what in what company, you know. So Cameron, I want to say you're the education guy, right?
Yes, sir. That would be correct.
All right. See, I'm not completely jacked up, but so reaching out, and especially in your guys' area, what have you seen bringing these large constrictors out in that area? Or what do you focus on when you're teaching about these large constrictors?
Usually it's breaking the ice is in my experience is sometimes the hardest part. You have the people that just come in fear stricken. They've been told the wrong thing. They've seen the wrong thing their entire lives. So they're afraid to even approach you. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to coax them in, and then once you finally get them in, it's just getting them to touch it. You talk them down. It's talking somebody off the ledge, man. You gotta get them to just touch the snake for the first time, and then they want to hold it, and then they keep coming back. I mean, I see it quite often. And,
Hey, Cameron.
yeah.
You try to get them to touch it, and then you try to get them to hold it. Is that right? I was just curious. Is that exactly what you said, or is it just?
It's a process.
Look, you got him blushing, Chris. You got him blushing.
What are you talking? Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I have no issue with it, guys. Get it.
This process can be used in all aspects of life.
I like that.
It was a good cover up, Cameron. Good one. I like it.
I'm handing life lessons for free. But no.
All right. So you said this year burn breeding was a little bit down. Do you think the industry is on the rise or on the decline for these larger species of snakes, these larger constrictors, and why do you think what you do?
What I meant when I said on the decline, I think breeders in general, it was a tough year for clutches. A lot of breeders that are very good at what they do just struggled, and we didn't have necessarily. It was kind of the year the ban was lifted. Everyone is super excited. We're gonna have all these berms on the market, and then it was like the market was just left starved because the clutches just didn't come through the way that I think everyone sort of thought they would. Right. And I don't know. That could be a multitude of reasons. The weather was kind of weird across the U.S. This past winter. I think it was different everywhere. I also think with the excitement, I wonder if a lot of breeders, including Apex, just didn't kind of rush the process and get a little bit more in front of it, and kind of gave us some weird clutches or some clutches that didn't turn out quite as successful as they could have been. But I think in general, though, the market is actually pretty strong, especially for burn. So previously it's always been retics, and that's because the ban wasn't on them and you could ship them. But as the ban has lifted from berms and people are like, well, what is a berm? Why were they banned? And then you start seeing them as such docile, very, for the most part. I mean, you have your outliers, but in general, as a species, very docile, very easy to work with. They're kind of that perfect transitionary animal from like a ball python to a retic or to an anaconda. And so I really, from what we can see, at least at Apex, and from what I get from other breeders, it seems like the market is actually there and actually pretty hungry, because this past season left a lot of holes and a lot of people really wanting the animals that they just couldn't quite get the morph they wanted or the specific genetic they wanted. So I think it's pretty strong, but I will open it up. Dalton, what do you think, man?
I think the market's still pretty strong. A lot of us had a rough season. I know at Apex in Indiana, we had a few girls slug. It doesn't always go as planned. I had, one of mine slug, as well as I had one that died. Like I said, it's not always glamour. It's heartbreaking too. Yeah. My clutch of the year just died. My albino lab female, she was bred to a hypo het lab, and she ended up dying from an egg rotting inside of her, and she ended up dying with 18 other eggs in her. It was very rough. It was heartbreaking. It break you down for sure. Yeah. But I was about ready to give up myself, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I just kept pushing forward. It was just a rough season for a lot. I mean, I talked to breeders all over the U.S. I mean, I even say in the world too. I got some people overseas as well. I talk to just to kind of stay with the craze of the other morphs that we don't have, just to keep a look on them, you know, see what they look like, how they coming out, you know, how unique can they really be. But back to our end, it's a lot of us had a rough season, and I think, like, I'm gonna elaborate with what Chris said. I think the weather was the biggest part. South Louisiana, we never ever hardly ever get snow. Guess what? It snowed. You know, it snowed. It was cold. It was usually I only get cold for a couple of days out of a week, or really the longest I've ever really had a long winter was 2 weeks or so. It's not often we stay cold long, but guess what? It came cold fast and it stayed there for a little while. And I think that just played a part. A lot of people don't realize when you breed these animals, it's more than just throwing them together. That plays a big part, but you got air pressures that all plays a part in their breeding habits and reproductive habits is the weather.
Oh yeah,
So
it's huge. I know.
I think with the weather being so cold, that was the main reason. And then, of course, of what Chris said, a lot of people was trying to be, you know, anxious and want to thrive all these clutches just to feed the market. And I think a lot of us was kind of rushing into it a little too much as well. You know, getting anxious and but us at Apex, unfortunately had some loss. A lot more lost than good, but we still had, you know, a few clutches that soared. I mean, they were great. It wasn't what we expected, but he still came out looking good, and he had a uniqueness to him.
Yeah.
You know, some of our hypos had this crazy jungle look in the pattern. I just thought was like, wow. You know, and some as well as the pearls too. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the albinos, but I was quite impressed with some of the ones that came. Look, I was actually almost tempted to hold one back because of how white it was. You know, it was rough, but it was definitely at least we were still blessed to have a little something to be able to spread that passion with some of these other people that bought from us. You know.
Anyone else getting that weird clicking?
Kind of sounds like a clicking. Yeah.
I'm getting the clicking too on mine. I didn't know if it was just me or everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a weird connection somewhere. I don't know what's going on, but we'll keep working through it as long as you get. Trying to find, where was I? I know, like, what you were talking about with the winter. A lot of my buddies are out of California, and their last winter was so back and forth with hot and cold that whether it was ball pythons, Burmese, retics, what have you, a lot of them ended up reabsorbing their follicles and just not having eggs. So it's definitely play by ear. You always wish for the best, but sometimes you don't always get it. I don't know. My daughter's being crazy. All right, so what's a species that you guys don't yet work with that you would really like to work with?
I've always really had a thing for hots. I used to keep hots in the past.
That's why you got me, buddy.
Huh?
That's why you got me, buddy.
Oh,
you need that hots, man. I got you, son.
Yeah. But no, on the real though, I've always had a thing for gaboon vipers. I think that would be something in the future that I would like to work with and, you know, reproduce as well. It's gonna be quite, you know, like I said, I've had hots in the past. I had, you know, albino western diamondbacks. I had, you know, copperheads, of course. I live in South Louisiana, so we full of, you know, the stanky hots. I would call them stanky because they stink.
Dang.
Oh,
you got some weird girls down there, man.
Yeah, that's some swamp rabbits. That's the swamp rabbits. You got to stay away from those swamp rabbits.
Goodness.
But yeah, man, I would have to say it would be the
okay, that's it. We're muting Dalton. He's not safe to have. No, I'm just playing. Oh, that's funny.
What about you, Chris?
Man, species I'm not working with. I don't know.
Behave, Josiah.
Berms do it for me. I'm pretty content with berms. As far as like other species I would go into, I'd probably keep it pretty simple. And I mean, I'd probably go back to the snake that I first kind of started keeping, and that would be ball pythons. The retics in general or the berms rather in general can be a lot of work. And so I think if I were to ever go into keeping or breeding another species, hint hint, it would probably end up being ball pythons. So, oh shit, we lost our guy.
You're
gone.
good.
Oh,
the little man got told no, and he got in his feelings.
There we go.
He doesn't like the word no. But
neither do I.
Don't we all? I think
Timber still tells me it every night, though.
Oh man, you brought the spider in the house.
All right, Mr. Quiet.
You throwing that? You done. We soon call the coroner and get him prepared for tomorrow morning.
So today, this is neither here nor there, but today I got in trouble because I held a tarantula for the first time, and I proceeded to buy said tarantula, and I brought that tarantula home, and it's down in my basement, and Timber is not very happy with me. But to that I say YOLO, and I say, I wear the pants in this relationship. Oh, just kidding. I'm kidding. Knowing all the hate mail that's about to come.
We're going to see. We're definitely going to find out.
Oh, yeah. It's coming right now, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting a stink eye from the wife because she knows what I want to say. To be fair, though, you said this. That's actually how I got my first retic. Was I went into the store and I was like, I really want a retic, and my wife said no, and I came home with a retic anyways.
My man.
And our second retic was at a U.S. ARC auction. I got told no more big snakes, and I came back and I was in trouble already. And I was like, right before I left out the hotel room door to go hang out with everyone again, it was like, oh, by the way, I purchased another retic, and ran out the door like a little wuss. But she deals with it now. She loves both of them. So.
She don't even get mad no more because I just don't even tell her. Like when I say, babe, we got a package coming in the mail. If you can't get it, let's get the neighbor to get it. She's like, well, what you got now? And I'm like, well, another bird, and she knows don't pay to get mad no more because I'm gonna still get what I want regardless. She can get mad and she probably beat me up a little bit, but I mean, I'm not gonna say I don't like it sometimes. I deserve it, but I still get what I want.
Oh man. Cameron hiding out in the dark over
Cameron, what are you about to do for us, bro?
I had to relocate. There's children.
Oh, I gotcha. I was like, man, it went dark, and then you were moving. I'm like, tune out,
so
people.
You've been quiet for a minute there, buddy. What species do you want to work with that you don't?
It's funny because I get asked that a lot, and really anything I can get my hands on, man, I want to work with all of them. But specific project animals that I would down the road, I'm kind of with Dalton. I really have always had a thing for hots. But specifically, I watch Andy Maddox drive me nuts. I want my hands on some cobras for sure. Some non-venomous species. I want to get into like viper boas and Dominican reds for sure.
I really appreciate it. It's funny because you guys took one of my lightning round questions away, basically, because I was going to ask if you guys wanted to get into hots. That's actually what started my love for all reptiles in general. I've grown up in the desert in New Mexico and Texas. And so my first love was actually diamondbacks, but I'm not going to just jump in and start playing with rattlesnakes. they still mesmerize me. I'm trying to find a way to work into handling them and helping relocate and things like that. But that comes with time and patience because you don't want to mess up like that. But
I mean, I can respect you for that because I mean, I still follow the Hots community, and there's this guy. I'm trying to remember his name. I mean, he was kind of like the laughing stock of the Hots community because he's the one that just jumped straight into it and started free handling this snake, and it bit his ass, and he later regretted it. I think it's more a person needs to have the mentality for it.
Did it do a lot of damage to his ass though?
No,
I feel like that's a soft tissue area. So for me, I'm thinking like it bit his ass, and what he lose? Like he got a lump in his cheek now that's gone, or?
No, I mean he looks like a normal person, except he's just mentally not there. I think that one went over has mental problems and he shouldn't be handling Hots. That's the only problem he got. Oh, it's not over my head. I'm just trying to avoid that conversation.
I thought maybe he sat weird now. I don't know. Shit.
I think he does sit weird but that was before the Hots problem.
Oh Lord. All right, so that comes down to my hard questions. This is gonna be hopefully this is gonna be the easier portion for you guys. We're going to start a little lightning round. Some of them are quick one answer or one word answers. That beer's getting to me. It's good though.
Good for you, man.
Some of them you do have to kind of explain a little bit more, but however you guys, we're going to jump into it. Beer or liquor?
Liquor.
Liquor.
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
With liquor.
You just became my wife's new best friend. Yeah, when she's not pregnant, all she drinks is Dr. Pepper and Fireball.
She rocks. Hey. She's my role model now.
So do you know who Lil Sweet is, Dalton?
What's that?
Lil Sweet.
No, I sure don't.
The spokesperson? Isn't he a spokesperson for Dr. Pepper?
I thought I was the spokesperson for Dr. Pepper. With all my Dr. Pepper posts, I feel I should be getting paid in Dr. Pepper.
Maybe in Louisiana, but in the rest of the U.S., I'm pretty sure it's Lil Sweet. Oh, no, that's Diet Dr. Pepper. That's Diet Dr. Pepper. Never mind, I'm wrong.
Good try, though.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Tea.
Cameron being quiet, he's like, I don't want no part of this.
Oh, I said coffee.
Coffee?
Say it with your chest, boy.
I put this phone down. Hold on.
Oh, Lord. Oh, my goodness. Freaking Harrison, man. I'll get to your question in a second, Harrison. Hold on. All right. Furry, feathered, or scaled animals? What's the best?
Scaled, of course.
Scales. Got to go with the scales, man.
You got a whole zoo in your house, Chris. You gonna say?
We do. I mean, we do. We have a. We have the feathered, we have the furry, and we have the scales. Actually,
I know. That's why I made that question.
And now, so I'll be honest. We have the scales, but this African gray, we rescued this African gray from a pet shop up in Fort Wayne, which is like 3 hours north of me, and he has a nasty bite. Like it's bad. It make a grown man cry.
Said after you have the baby,
this grown man. But he's actually really come around. So if I had a friendlier bird, if the bird was friendlier, I would maybe say feathers. But he's taken time. Maybe in like 2 years, I'll say feathers. We'll see.
Something for the
next I've had the macaws in the past. Something about them scales, Just got your heart.
I don't know. Like, I think reptiles are always going to hold like a really high respect for me. So obviously it's scales. I don't have furry animals anymore because one bit my son and one just was too much for us to handle with everything going on right now. So we adopted that one out. And I actually have never owned anything feathered. It's not that I dislike birds. I just like the attitude of all the birds that I like. So
I get it.
It's a fun predicament to be in. Let me jump back into this. Favorite holiday?
Gotta go with Thanksgiving, man. Gotta go with Thanksgiving. That's that turkey, man. It's that turkey and that stuffing and the mashed potatoes and the boat of gravy.
I'm gonna have to go with Halloween. More mysterious, you know. I like the mysterious side of things.
Oh, most interesting man alive.
That's right.
Oh,
What we got, Cameron?
I'm gonna go with Easter because that's when Chris comes back alive.
what? What? What just happened?
Did you just call Chris Jesus?
I'm way nervous right now. All right, so recently,
look, his fucking forehead is turning red.
Recently, I got pretty blitzed on some whiskey, and there may or may not have been a meme of me that surfaced where I was passed out on the floor, and it looked like I could have been like on a cross. Long story short, I didn't make the meme. The meme showed up. It was funny as hell. But now I've been dealing with these jokes ever since, where people, because I passed out once on whiskey while someone was around and snapped a photo, Cameron. Now I don't know if I'm gonna live it down. So.
All right. So is Timber still in the room, or did she run off on us? All right,
Come on,
Timber,
Dad.
are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
How did you feel when Chris first got into?
She said it felt great when I first got in,
when
baby.
Chris first got into the industry of breeding snakes.
How did I feel when he first got into the industry of breeding snakes? I was more than supportive. I think that we went from ball pythons to Burmese pythons, and along with Chris, I fell in love with the Burms more than I did the balls. I do love ball pythons.
I thought you were just going to say balls again. I was really waiting for you to
Chris,
say
I
balls.
made sure I put that python part in there.
I bit my tongue, man. I can get smacked.
Chris
right
was
now.
turning red. Like, Cameron been red all night, but Chris was like, it's coming. I'm going to get my chance.
Chris about to unleash.
So I was excited. It was definitely an experience that I was on board with and excited to try. So.
See, I think that's wonderful because I had to ask my wife, and I've asked a couple of other significant others or wives or what have you, and I think what really makes the breeders in this industry is having that support from their significant other, because there's days where my wife would probably prefer that I sold all these animals, but she's always really supportive of it. So,
Yep.
And that's it, guys. Unless our audience has some questions to throw at you, that was my interview, guys. It's been wonderful, and I've enjoyed my beer and the laughs.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man, I've been craving that Dr. Pepper that I left in the house. Like, y'all just don't know. I'm withdrawing over here.
So if anyone in our audience would like to ask anything, let us know now, or forever hold your peace. There more than likely will be another Apex interview as they continue to grow, as they're doing so well.
Yep. Appreciate that, man. I thank you for having us. I know we had talked about doing this a while ago, and it seemed like
it's been in the works for a long time.
Yeah, it just seems like life, one thing to another, But I think the timing was great because we got to introduce. For me, it's really exciting because we just had the addition of Cameron kind of getting on, and we've had Dalton rocking, and so it's nice to get all the guys together for something like this where we can kind of all sit and powwow with you guys. So, yeah, awesome.
Definitely
Thanks for
been
having
fun.
us, man.
Absolutely. It was a beautiful time. Like, you guys, I'm not going to say clowns, but there's a reason that your social media presence is as high as it is at this current time. There's always a laugh when it comes to Apex. Always a laugh.
We just happy-go-lucky, positive people, really. Just we like to stay positive and happy, you know, and we humble for what we got, you know. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, I know for me, I've started with, you know, really much of nothing when I got into this. It grew into something so big. You know,
I did forget
just
a
few
question.
tanks.
I'm sorry. Harrison's yelling at me. I did forget a question. And this is his question for you guys. I don't know if we have any Britney Spears fans here, but apparently my little 5'2" Asian friend is a Britney Spears fan.
Hit me, baby, one more time.
What berm was that on Britney Spears in 2001? And did it get
albino
lucky?
berm?
Albino, for sure. Had to have been an albino. And did it get lucky? I mean, it was on Britney Spears. Fuck. I mean, I feel like it got lucky. Was that before she went crazy?
That was before she went crazy.
That berm got lucky as shit then. That berm was lucky.
Well, he got lucky twice.
It did?
I don't know. He got lucky with her, and then he got lucky when he left her.
Oh.
The camera keeps looking at the camera like, what'd I get myself into?
You know, the other thing too is the kind of what kind of snake did Jake the Snake have?
That was a Burmese Python.
If Jake the Snake had a Burmese Python, I mean
that's old school wrestling.
That's right.
That's probably not a lot of people know who that is.
Good, Tim. That was Timber. Timber's telling me thank me.
Thank you, Timber.
Man, let her get her shine, man. She deserves a little shine.
She does deserve a little shine. She doesn't constantly give me a headache, so.
Are you about to get one now?
I know.
All right, guys. I want to throw a huge thank you out to the crew of Apex Sneks. I'm never going to be able to say that.
You don't have to. We go by Apex more than anything. So.
All right. So the crew of Apex, huge thank you. I know this has been months in the works, and I agree with you, Chris. I feel like right now was the right time. It all just seemed to click and come together. I definitely would love to have you guys again in the future as we both continue to grow.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing what you guys do. If you have anything you want to say, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right now.
You rock, John. Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, I appreciate you having us. It was definitely fun and a great experience for sure. First time I ever did anything like this.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Don't worry. I'll be teaching Chris how to do this so that his ass can quit being lazy and do more YouTube videos.
Hey.
Yeah, Chris been slacking in that area.
I had to give a little teaser.
No, hold on.
I had to give a little teaser.
To be fair, I know Chris did a production video on his first YouTube video for like a year, and then he put something out recently. I need to know, Chris, when's the next video, man?
So you know, I like to play some cards, and I like to keep it really close to the chest. We're actually working on them now. So we're coordinating a few things with a buddy of mine. We were going to go really hard with the videos starting this year, but the outreach stuff that we're doing now is going to kind of deter that a little bit. So I think you could look for You can look for videos on YouTube. They won't be quite as similar as the production video that we did the first time around. I think the production videos will start up again probably March timeframe. We've got to get some of our outreach stuff going, and so you'll actually see a lot of content around that kind of going into the future. But so YouTube will be a little bit differently. It'll be kind of used a little differently than the initial launch video, but it's coming. It's coming. We haven't forgot about it. Just trying to make it fit into everything else. So
I had to get you, bro. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. I need it.
If you guys haven't, and I looked at his subscriber count before we started this, so I know a lot of my followers aren't over there yet. Go over to Apex, check them out. Go hit subscribe, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you like anything I do, you're going to love what they fucking do.
Thank you.
That first video blew me away. I was laughing my ass off the whole time. But go give these guys some love. Follow them on, well, I'll let you guys do that. I'm not going to do your work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, just we're on YouTube, Apex, Sneks. So Snakes, the way that everyone hates seeing it spelled. And then we're on Instagram. We've got a Facebook page. We're pretty good about getting content on there pretty much daily. So feel free to go over, hit subscribe, give us a follow, give us feedback. We love hearing from people. We try to be as interactive as we can. You know, we love to have anybody kind of come over and throw some jabs at us. We like to have fun. So,
all right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Go enjoy that berm life. Woo. Don't play with poop too much. I know I get to go play with some retic shit right now. So,
yeah.
Look, it's not often you get to hang out with something just so big. You know, not everybody gets to do that. This is our biggest one down here. That's Layla.
I hang out with something big every night, man. What are you talking about?
Me too.
Oh, Lord, here we go. There goes that ego. There goes that ego.
No, I'm
right,
down south. What are you talking about?
Thank you for joining us. These clowns. They're about to go. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Next week, we will have another live. Same time. Be sure to join us again. And we'll take care. Or you guys take care. I'm a little drunk. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
All right.
I didn't even say